What are the chemical properties of acids and what are the chemical properties of bases? Let us find out all of these in one single video. So please continue watching to know the chemical properties of both acids and bases in just a single shot. What happens when an acid reacts with base? If you want to find the detailed activity, they are available in the playlist of acids, bases and salts on my channel FM Education Academy. Today I'm just going to discuss the conclusion we got from the activities performed. So whenever acid reacts with metal, what happens? What acid had we taken? The acid we took, for example, is HCl, and the metal we took, for example, is sodium. Okay, then this sodium reacts with HCl. What will happen whenever sodium reacts with HCl or whenever sodium is mixed with HCl? This will split. Okay, and this sodium will react with chlorine to form sodium chloride, and we know we have hydrogen gas. Hydrogen cannot exist alone as H. So we have H2. Okay. So what is sodium chloride here? We know sodium chloride is a salt of sodium and H2 is hydrogen gas. So what is happening whenever acid is reacting with metal? When acid reacts with metal, metal salt and hydrogen gas is evolved. Remember this. This is the first chemical property of acid. Metal salt plus hydrogen gas. Now the second chemical property of acids is that acids react with metal carbonate to form dash. Okay, in this also we discussed. So acid, when it reacts with metal carbonate, again we'll take HCl as an acid, and metal carbonate means metal I'm taking as sodium Na, and carbonate means CO3. Okay. So metal I'm taking as sodium and carbonate, but I know the formula of sodium carbonate is Na2CO3. So I'll write 2 here. So HCl is reacting with sodium carbonate. How to know the products formed? Simply split this hydrogen and chlorine. So we know that this sodium reacts with chlorine to form sodium chloride. Okay, sodium reacts with chlorine to form sodium chloride. Then we know we have one hydrogen atom and we have 3 oxygen atoms left, and we have one carbon atom left. So carbon with 2 atoms will become carbon dioxide. Then 1 oxygen is left, and hydrogen cannot exist alone. So 2 hydrogens and 1 oxygen will give me water. Okay, so whenever HCl reacts with sodium carbonate, sodium chloride, carbon dioxide and water is evolved. So what can I say in general? This you can take any acid and find out. You can take H2SO4, you can take any metal carbonate and find out. You'll get the same answer. Okay, so what is sodium chloride again? Metal salt. That is a salt of metal. Okay, plus carbon dioxide, gas is released, and also water is released. Water is released. Okay, the third reaction is acid is reacting with metal hydrogen carbonate. Hydrogen carbonate to form what? Okay, same. I'll take acid. That is, I'll take here also HCl. Okay, so when HCl reacts with metal hydrogen carbonate means NaHCO3, metal hydrogen carbonate, to form what? See, here also it will split, and this will also split sodium hydrogen carbonate. So sodium chloride with chlorine to form sodium chloride NaCl, and H2 and H here. So 2 hydrogen atoms and 1 oxygen will form water, and similarly 1 carbon and 2 oxygen atoms will form carbon dioxide. So here also I'll get carbon dioxide and water. Okay, so whenever acid HCl reacts with metal hydrogen carbonate NaHCO3, what is formed? NaCl is metal salt, CO2 is carbon dioxide, and H2 is water. So acid plus metal hydrogen carbonate gives rise to metal salt plus carbon dioxide gas plus water. The fourth reaction is acid is reacting with base to form what? Okay, for that let us take, in place of acid, HCl again. Okay, and for base let us take NaOH, that is sodium hydroxide. So how to know the reaction? Again it splits When hydrochloric acid is mixed with sodium hydroxide and OHCl is mixed with NaOH, Na combines with chlorine to form NaCl, okay, and we have 2 hydrogen and 1 oxygen, so it will form sodium chloride and water. So what is sodium chloride here? We know sodium chloride is a salt of metal. So whenever acid is reacting with base, we get metal salt and H2O is water. So acid plus base gives rise to metal salt plus water. These chemical properties will remain same if you take any acid and any base. Okay. Now the next reaction will be what will happen when acid reacts with metal oxide. We know that metal oxide and acid react together. Okay. Again, in place of acid I am taking HCl, and in place of metal oxide I am taking copper oxide, that is CuO. CuO is copper oxide, which is an oxide of copper. So for metal oxide, I am taking copper oxide, CuO. So when HCl reacts with copper oxide, what will happen? This is splitting. Okay, so copper combines with chlorine to form cupric chloride. Okay, CuCl2. Okay, this is called as cupric chloride. And hydrogen combines with oxygen to form water, H2O. Okay, is the equation balanced? 2 hydrogens here, but only 1 hydrogen is there over here. Okay, and 2 chlorines are over here, but only 1 chlorine is there over here. So in order to balance the equation, let us write 2 beside HCl. Now the equation is balanced, as on the LHS we have 2 hydrogens, on the RHS we have 2 hydrogens. Here on the LHS I have 2 chlorines, on the RHS I have 2 chlorines. 1 oxygen, 1 copper, 1 copper. So the equation is balanced now. So what did we observe? What is cupric chloride here? Cupric chloride is again a salt of copper. Copper is a metal here, right? The metal is copper here, okay? So whenever acid is reacting with metal oxide, cupric chloride and water is formed. That is, whenever hydrochloric acid is reacting with copper oxide, cupric chloride and water is formed. In general, we can say acid is reacting with metal oxide to form metal salt and water. The next reaction is what will happen when acid is reacting with water. Okay, when acid is dissolved in water, what happens is that acid is reacting with water to form something. Okay, or what are released, we'll see there. So here in place of acid I'm taking HCl, and we know the formula water is H2O. So when acid is reacting with H2O, what is happening? We know that in water, whenever acid reacts in water, H plus ions are released. Remember that, because as H plus ions are released, because it is an acid. Acid gives H plus ions in a solution or in water. So whenever acid HCl reacts with water H2O, H plus ions or H3O plus ions are released. What will happen here? We have H plus ions, okay, or we can say H3O plus ions and Cl minus ions will split. Okay, that is either H plus ions will release when acid dissolves in water, or H3O plus, that is hydronium ions, release, okay, when acid reacts with water. And as we have chlorine here, Cl minus ion also splits. That is, it splits into 2 parts, that is cation plus and anion minus. Remember this. So which type of reaction is this? This reaction is also called as, we know, decomposition reaction. What is decomposition reaction? The reaction in which the reactants split and form 2 or more products is called as decomposition reaction. Okay, so we can say this reaction is also a type of decomposition reaction, as hydrogen and chlorine are splitting and forming H plus and Cl minus ion, or H2O plus and Cl minus ion. Okay, so we can say that whenever acid is dissolving in water, or whenever acid is mixing in water, or whenever acid is reacting with water, which ions are released? Hydrogen ions are released, or hydronium ions are released. H3O plus and hydronium ions here, Cl minus ions. Okay, so basically what did you observe? Whenever acid mixes with water, hydronium ions are released or hydrogen ions are released. That is, H plus or H3O plus ions are released. Remember that. Similarly, let us find out the properties of bases. Okay, first property is same as acid. That is, what will happen when base is reacting with metal. Let us find out by taking some base and by taking some metal. Okay, the base which we are taking here is sodium hydroxide and the metal which we are taking here is zinc. So whenever sodium hydroxide reacts with zinc, what will happen? This will split, okay? So, and this will also split, okay? So remember that when zinc reacts with sodium, sodium zincate is formed. The formula for sodium zincate is Na2ZnO2. Okay, and this hydrogen is remaining alone. There is hydrogen gas. So you have to remember that when zinc is reacting with sodium hydroxide, it is not forming water. Sodium and oxygen both are reacting with zinc to form sodium zincate. Sodium zincate is also a salt of zinc. That is, sodium zincate is also metal salt. Okay, so remember, both sodium and oxygen, both Na and O, are reacting with this zinc metal, and they are leaving hydrogen gas alone. Hydrogen is not reacting with zinc. So hydrogen we are writing separately because hydrogen is not reacting with zinc, but both sodium and oxygen are reacting with zinc to form sodium zincate, Na2ZnO2. So whenever base reacts with metal, metal salt and hydrogen gas is evolves. The next reaction is base does not react with metal carbonate and metal hydrogen carbonate. As we can see here, acid is reacting with metal oxide. Similarly here, base is reacting with non-metallic oxide. Okay, non-metallic oxide means it is reacting with an oxide of a non-metal. Remember, base reacts with an oxide of non-metal, whereas acid reacts with an oxide of metal. So base we are taking as calcium hydroxide. We know calcium hydroxide, CuOH2 is the base. So we are taking for base calcium hydroxide, and for non-metallic oxide we are taking carbon dioxide. Why is carbon dioxide a non-metallic oxide? Because carbon is a non-metal. So carbon dioxide means oxide of carbon. So for non-metallic oxide, I'm taking here as CO2, that is carbon dioxide. And for base, I'm taking calcium hydroxide. Calcium hydroxide reacts with carbon dioxide. This splits here. And it will form, calcium reacts with carbon dioxide to form calcium carbonate. Okay, how calcium carbonate is released? Because calcium is directly reacting with carbon dioxide, it reacts with all. That is, it reacts with carbon dioxide as well as it reacts with one oxygen which is present in OH2. So it forms calcium carbonate. There is one calcium, one carbon, two oxygens from here and one oxygen from OH2. So that is why it forms CaCO3. That is why two oxygens plus one oxygen, that is three oxygens are here. So plus one hydrogen, two hydrogens are left here and one oxygen is left. Already we took one oxygen here. So one oxygen and two hydrogens are left here. That is two hydrogens and one oxygen means H2O. So whenever calcium hydroxide reacts with carbon dioxide, calcium carbonate and water is released. What is calcium carbonate? Calcium carbonate is also a salt, that is a non-metal salt. Okay, so when base reacts with non-metallic oxide, salt plus water is released. Let us take the next chemical property is what will happen when base reacts with acid. With base I am taking NaOH, and for acid I am taking HCl. Okay, this will split and this will also split when sodium hydroxide reacts with hydrochloric acid HCl. This hydrogen combines with OH to form water, and this sodium reacts with chlorine to form sodium chloride. So what do you observe? Sodium hydroxide reacts with hydrochloric acid to form sodium chloride and water. That is, when base reacts with acid, what is sodium chloride? Salt of metal, that is sodium. So whenever base reacts with acid, metal salt and water is formed. The fourth chemical property we will take is what will happen when base reacts with water. What is base we are taking here? Let us take base as NaOH, and we know the formula of water is H2. So whenever base dissolves in water or whenever base is soluble in water, what will happen is that this again decomposition reaction happens. What is decomposition reaction? The reaction in which the reactant split to form ions is called as decomposition reaction. So here also what will happen is that OH in water will give me OH minus ions. Okay, OH in water will give me OH minus ions, and it will split Na plus separately. So Na plus and OH minus ions are released. That is, they both split when base is mixing in water. Okay, so remember that whenever base is reacting with water, which ions are released? Hydroxyl ions. OH minus ions here are known as hydroxyl. And Na plus ions are also released. So remember, this is important. That is, whenever base is reacting with water, hydroxyl ions are released. And here, in case of acid, whenever acid is reacting with water, hydrogen ions or hydronium ions are released. Okay, forget this Cl minus and this Na plus ions. This depends on what base we are taking. If you are taking the base as NaOH, then Na plus ions are released. If you are taking the acid as HCl, then Cl minus ions are released. Okay, if you are taking the acid as H2SO4, then SO4 minus ions will be released here. Okay, so leave this. This Cl minus and this Na plus depends on the base and the acid which we are taking. Just remember that when base is dissolving in water, hydroxyl ions, that is OH minus ions are released. And when acid is reacting in water, hydrogen ions H plus or hydronium ions H2O plus ions are released. Please keep this with you, okay, so that all the properties of acids and bases will be with you. This is intense physics, physical chemistry concept. Okay, what do you observe here? We observe that when acid is reacting with base, metal, salt and water are released here. Here also we have metal, salt and water. Okay, and here also when acid is reacting with metal oxide, metal, salt and water are released. Same thing here, when base is reacting with acid, metal, salt and water is released. Okay, and when base is reacting with non-metallic oxide, salt and water is released. So remember, when acid reacts with base, metal, salt and water is released, right? And when base is reacting with acid, metal, salt and water is released. So here if you observe, as the products are metal, salt and water, it means that acid, when it reacts with base, it will give me salt and water. So here we can say that the metal oxide is reacting as a base. So the metal oxide which we took here is acting as a base. Why? Because when acid reacts with base, salt and water is released. So metal oxide which we took here is acting as a base here. Okay. And the non-metallic oxide which we took here, what is base plus acid? Base plus acid is salt plus water. So the non-metallic oxide which we took here is acting as acid. Okay. So hope you have understood this concept. Thank you for watching. Stay blessed. Subscribe, like and share the video.